Right, we are going to be going to TNA now and Dr. Stevie. But before we go to Dr. Stevie itself, we actually have to talk about your leaving WWE. And I want you to set the table for us because I believe, in 2005, 2006, you had this conversation with Johnny Ace. We discussed it on previous shows where you signed a contract and Johnny basically said, this is probably going to be your last contract with the company. And you were prepared that, you're going to have 3 more years in the company, I guess, and then do whatever you're going to do. But then in the last, 2 years of WWE, you'd be on TV for a bit, and then you'd just be gone for 4 months, and then you'd come back for a bit, and then it was fits and starts where you'd never have an extended bit of time on television to establish yourself properly. And then you were, for the most part, in the last couple of years, used to put over people on WWE ECW at that point. So at what point did you know you were definitely leaving WWE? Was it your decision? Was it their decision? Or was it mutual?
No, this was one of those things where you're waiting every week anyway. It pretty much after the Right to Censor was the first wave of when I said, okay, I'm getting released because they're not doing anything with me. Then the Chronic thing happened. I'm setting the table for the years previous to that. The Chronic thing after one night was done. So I thought I was done, even though JR reassured me, we're still going to do something with you. Then during the whole invasion thing, nobody was really figuring it outside of maybe 2, 3, or 4 people. Then the new ECW. Now I was given a little bit of grace because of the Victoria stuff during that post thing. When was the invasion? Then we did Stevie Night Heat from '02 to '04. New ECW came along. Nothing. We talked about that on the Paul Heyman episode. 100% convinced at this point it had to do with that and the stuff that stemmed from ECW, since Paul was the creative force mostly at ECW and WWE. I knew from week to week from that ECW thing that my days were numbered, my hours were numbered. It was just a matter of whatever. So fast forward, every year at WrestleMania, the day after, the week after, or the month after come the releases. Year in and year out, I seemingly survived it until 2008. I believe August 15th, 2008, I got the call from Johnny Ace. I got the call and it was either Ann Russo or somebody else, Nicole, who said, Johnny wants to talk to you. And that was always, you know what I mean? When the person in the front of that office calls to tell you that the person in charge wants to talk to you. I believe this was the same day both the Highlanders and a couple other people were already released. So it was a group release on that day. And Johnny called and he said the line. I actually was in Circuit City. That was a tech store, like a Best Buy back in the day in Phil. I was in Connecticut. And I remember when I was talking to him, hey, Johnny, what's up? He's asking me how I'm doing and everything. And I know it's coming. And I grabbed an Xbox backpack, the official one, which at the time was 80 or $100. And I'm like, oh, this would be cool to travel with and everything. He goes, Stevie, I'm sorry, we got to let you go. And I just put the backpack back on the shelf. And then he started talking to me, oh, it's a budget thing and everything. And you're always welcome back. And I said, well, I'll see you Monday then. No, you can't. I didn't, you know what I mean? I go, why did you say it then? You know what I mean? So we were going back and forth. He even said, I will call Japan. If you don't want to work in the States or you want to go away, try to get over, I'll call Japan. Because he was booking All Japan for a time before he did the WCW and WWE agent and office work. So I appreciate that, Johnny. And I think he was trying to, in a way, have me say, oh, no, I'm probably going to reach out to TNA and I'm going to try to see if I can do anything. But I didn't say anything. I go, I don't know what I'm going to do. I'll figure it out in the next 3 months because we had the 90-day no-compete, extremely unconstitutional, but it was there. And I had 3 months and I had a mortgage. I had bills like anybody else. So I'm like, what am I going to do? So the 90 days come and go and I'm working indies and doing things, but it's a lateral move.
The process of leaving WWE or being released from WWE, does it involve any paperwork? Does it involve, you might laugh at this, like an outgoing interview or something like that.
I'm gonna laugh a lot.
I know. I thought.
Hey,
just
what do
throw
you
that one
think
in.
about this? Do you have anything to say about?
Well, apparently,
Bruce Pritchard and
at
Michael
one point, I think
Hayes?
they were doing it later on. Would you believe?
Oh man, I would have been very, very honest. They would. If you think they're not calling me now, they wouldn't have called me after that.
So what's the process with paperwork or anything like that, saying we're releasing you 90-day notice? And also, do you have like any official paperwork that says you can work from this date and what you can and can't do?
I don't recall signing anything. I don't recall any paperwork. They probably have paperwork internally with that date, and they probably pay close attention to it, sometimes closer attention to others. I don't know if I was one of those. The checks, my weekly, kept coming in, and any kind of maybe royalties I was owed, if it wasn't on schedule, that would come afterwards. So I got paid for 90 days, and then day 91, I worked some indies. I think I did some appearances and signings, nothing physical during the 90 days. And I believe their thing in WWE was they always said they never fired anybody who was hurt, which they absolutely did. I think Test was one of them. So, but during that 90 days when you're technically still under contract with them paying you, if you get hurt wrestling, they have to pay for the surgery and continue to pay you, whatever culture there was with that. So I think that was their defense for the 90 days. No paperwork, nothing I believe I signed that was like the official release and you're done on this day. But the check stopped 90 days later. I think I called Talent Relations and said, hey, it's day 91. Am I okay to take bookings? Which is weird and kind of Stockholm syndrome because why am I calling the company that fired me to see if it's okay to work somewhere else? But that's where it started. And then, you know, I only did the one phone call with Terry where I said Dr. Stevie, but I was so afraid. I didn't want to do anything stupid to where they can say there was contract tampering, even during the no compete clause period, you know? I just wanted to be careful.
As an outgoing talent, who would you contact for various information within the company at that time?
Well, there's no outgoing. You're gone.
Well, you're gone, but if you need to contact the company, I mean, would you just call Johnny Ace again, or would you...
No, there was no communication with Johnny Ace. You're persona non grata. You're dead to them. Like, you know, from any kind of conversational standpoint. I had a good rapport with the people that said, hey, Johnny wants to talk to you. I had a good rapport with them, and I continue to have a good rapport even with Kristen, who's currently there, I think, as this time. If I had a problem with royalty checks or like, say, like Crash Holly's daughter, had asked for some of his matches, digital, you know, things they can send or whatever, I reached out to Kristen in Talent Relations. This was like a year ago. So this was like, no, this actually was further back, but recent years. And they would get back to me and say, hey, sorry, we sent the check to the wrong address. What's your new address? Or we can't send her the matches. Like, can you look on YouTube? But anytime, even after I got released, there was actually 2 times where there was a local charity that needed something. I sent an email to Talent Relations, and they sent a box of stuff. So it's very much a bipolar type of company that way. Some of the stuff, and I'm glad they would help charities out and stuff on the request of the talent or former talent. But then there's other things we talked about with the spine infection. We didn't talk about it, but you and I talked about it, where it's an entirely different story. So it's crazy. You don't know what you're going to get with them. So there's no exit interview, no outgoing interview. There's no outgoing process or outboarding process or anything like that. You're just gone.
Did you, this might be, it didn't happen anymore in the late 2000s, but did you have to hand in any tickets or anything like that? Would they still send you at this time airline tickets in advance, or was that old school? You print them out yourself?
Yeah, there would be, I think they did have some e-tickets that were coming in here and there. We were kind of in the middle of that transition where, you know, it was going to somewhat online. There were a lot of times I got the paper tickets for the week or for the month or whatever. I remember it. I wrestled Rusev. It was the second match, you know, Stevie Richards, Rusev, Electric Boogaloo, or Let Me Break Your Arm in the second match, which if you watch it, my shoulder pops as he's got me in the arm bar. because I stopped selling and I just look around like, what? Oh my God, my shoulder's out. What do I do? I just stopped screaming and selling. And it was like I saw my family somewhere in the audience. I just started looking. But I remember after that, I went to Wildwood to, be with Big Sal, Danny Doring, Roadkill, all these guys. And then went back home, and that Tuesday or Wednesday is when the call came in. So
here's something which I've never asked you before. I didn't even write in the format. I was thinking about it before. You'll remember that the Dudley boys specifically had an issue with the trademark, the intellectual property for the name they were given in ECW. You were Stevie Richards for the entirety of ECW and WCW, but so were the Dudley boys. They didn't go WCW, but you know what I'm saying. So how come they had such an issue with the Dudley boys trademark where they could have continued contesting it, but it would have cost them a lot of money in legal fees? Was there no issue with you keeping the Stevie Richards name when you left WWE?
Well, that's a point of contention because I was Stevie Richards on the Indies, and I was Stevie Richards since day one, or Steve Richards, then Stevie. They own Steven, much like that meeting. They own Steven, but remember my final contract was that I own the name Stevie Richards. So the Dudleys, when they left and got released, I'm sure that they didn't have that addendum put in, nor WWE would put it in. You know why? Because the Dudleys were way more over than me. The Dudleys sold a ton of merchandise. There were still DVDs and Blu-rays. There was all sorts of things to monetize the Dudley characters and the Dudley's brand. Now I said this before, Devon and Bubba turned around and made themselves Team 3D. Awesome. I get it. It's close enough. Not like Sasha Banks, Mercedes Moné. It's not close enough. Dudley boys, their finish was the 3D. We're Team 3D. So that to me was, and instead of what was it? Brother Ray, Brother Devon, right? Mm-hmm. And then they turn into Bully Ray. So you don't even know what a gold mine you have with these characters like that. But no, I just wasn't over, and I wasn't, like Johnny had said, my name's worthless anyway to the company. So I used that to my advantage to own the name post. But going to TNA, Stevie Richards, as far as I was concerned, was going to die forever. And I was going to be Dr. Stevie. So when we get to the EV2 episode, we'll discuss how good that went.
The last question is, how did it make you feel? I mean, you were always on edge that this was going to be the year and this is the call, but how did it actually feel to get that call, to finally realize that you were no longer under contract, you were on your own again, as you said, and, persona non grata? Was it a tiny bit of relief? Was it worse than you thought it was going to be? Were you okay with the decision?
It was a mix between relief and terror. Relieved because, okay, it's up to me now. Terrified because it's up to me now. So it's much like leaving a 9-to-5 job for your own business. And you gotta figure it out and start all over again. There was a little bit of Stockholm syndrome. Like, the check came in every 2 weeks. I was there. Of course, it was an abusive relationship too, where I constantly wanted them to finally use me to my potential, and they constantly did the opposite even further, almost like it was a joke or a rib. So it was very, very like a toxic relationship, as anything with a wrestler and a promoter. It's never going to turn out the way either person thinks, mostly the wrestler or the talent. It's not going to turn out. And we're all eventually going to get released. Somebody like Dolph Ziggler, who didn't reach anywhere near the potential being the incredible athlete and performer he is, will probably now get another run because he got over in TNA. But why didn't you just use the guy the way he was supposed to be used from day one? Gave him a stupid name, didn't rely on his amateur ability or anything, and then he became a hell of a professional wrestler with all that incredible background. Now with me, it was really like not a depressive state, but it was kind of a depressive state because when you get released from that after 10 years, not knowing if TNA is going to bite on your pitch for a Dr. Stevie character, now you're trying to get a regular job. Now you're trying to figure out if I can fit into the real world. the internet and this presentation was in its infancy. And I had the T4 show I started in January 2007. It was going to be, in my mind, I was going to be the Steve Jobs of some tech company, or I was going to present and use my ability on camera in front of live audiences to be able to do something. I thought it was a natural fit. But man, let's put it this way, just as an overarching theme. Even in WWE, as early as 2001, 2002, I was always looking to see what would be next that I could prepare, so I didn't have weeks, months, or years to try to pivot and try to reinvent and try to do something and try to find something more stable. Well, guess what? I didn't even find, there's nothing stable, by the way. Even today as we're doing this, it's not stable, but I didn't even find what was starting to make me money until 2019 with the fitness brand. And that was two pivots from previous things I tried to do. So if there's a message out there for anybody who gets released, if you can find something today, tomorrow, the next day, that's great. But for most people, it is going to take years to try to find out, sift through, leave all the baggage behind, and then find your niche in or out of wrestling.